Well, I am so excited for our podcast today. I have Danyale with Sweet Pea Solutions joining us. And Danyale, I just want to hand over the introduction to you so you can share with us all of the things, the services you provide, and the postpartum training that you do.
Yes, I'm so excited for being here. So thank you for having me. As Stacey said, I'm Danyale Washington. Thank you for tuning in. I am located in the suburbs of Chicago. I used to say just Chicago, but we're very the stickler. If you know anyone from Chicago, you cannot say you're from Chicago unless like your driver license says Chicago. It's a thing. So I'm right outside of the city, about 30 minutes from the city. I am the owner and founder of Sweet Pea Solutions, which is an infant and family support service company. I provide infant feeding, postpartum support, sleep support, as well as just parent coaching for children ages birth to 5. I truly have like a huge passion for supporting families in that early years, much like we see kind of there's a push for it. I'm loving the movement for supporting families in such a very transitional period. I am also a postpartum doula training. I am also a postpartum doula trainer with ProDoula, which is my certifying organization. I recently became part of their training and development team this year. So I guess it'd be last year. Should I go back and say last year? Or should I just put the year in? Because now we know it's gonna be. I do virtual and in person. I absolutely love being able to more doulas come into the world because there is a doula shortage. The only thing better than being able to be a doula with families is to help more families have more doulas by bringing more doulas into the. So I started out as a early childhood learner teacher at my alma mater in Chicago. I worked with birth through actually with toddlers mostly, and then from there it's like a fancy daycare. It's a early childhood center on campus that I worked at, and a nanny for some of the families, and then a nanny after I graduated, and then kind of just like gradually fell into the role of just supporting families in various ages and stages of parenthood. And then when my sister gave birth to my niece, her first, I naturally kind of ran into this role or fell into this role of just being her doula without even knowing it. I truly believe that being a doula is a state of being. It's like a characteristic. It's part of your personality. So it truly just means that you care for other people and care about other people and you want them to just be their best selves. And I took a training shortly after my sister moved back, and then it's been kind of onwards and upwards since then.
Wow, that's amazing. And just all those years of experience with all those ages, such a skill set to carry into like the postpartum work we do. I also love how I hear a lot of stories of almost like being a nanny and naturally like being into a postpartum doula. We had someone on the team like that. And I think it is just such a natural, you almost have it, an innate, ability to step into that role. So that is incredible. And I just know when I was, looking for those to join me in these conversations, your wealth of knowledge and experience was going to be something that could shed light on those becoming doulas and even potentially doulas who haven't experienced various things throughout their roles. And so I'm excited to have you here today. So thank you so much. And I just want to kind of hop right in. We're going to get to talk about a lot of different areas in supporting families. And so I'd love to hear how you personally define your philosophy towards postpartum support and supporting families through that process.
Yeah, so I truly believe that the postpartum doula or the role of a postpartum doula is to come in to help families find their groove, right? Find their confidence, find their unique skills and how they can hone those and even the skills that they need to work on, like areas of improvement. But I truly focus on the stuff that they have because a lot of the things we have, a lot of the skills and tools we need, we just got to learn how to use them, right? So my big goal coming in and helping families is not to come in and be the expert. I am the expert, right? As I know babies, I like to say like I know babies, right? Through my training, certifications, experience, but every baby is so different. And if you've been in the field for long enough, or if you've been in the field in different capacities, you know that every child. And so I don't come that I'm the expert in their baby. We're learning this baby together. I have a little bit of a leg up, but I say little, like very little bit of a leg up because I know babies in general, but we're all learning this baby at the same time. And I can use those skills and tools I've learned from the babies that I've, cared for in my tenure. But at the same time, like we have to learn what works for this baby. So they're the expert in their baby. And at the end of our time together, I want them to be confident that they can make those decisions on their own.
Yeah, and that is huge of I think hearing you say that if they're the expert in their baby is automatically giving it back to them and building their confidence and not, oh, you have to have me to be able to be, successful at stepping into this parenting role. So I just really, really think that that's a huge part that we can walk in and say. And I think there's also times where like we have those skill sets and we're navigating how to foster those into parents. Are there any kind of techniques or anything that you use that kind of specifically helps to build that confidence in the parents? Or do you have kind of like, you're like, okay, these are the 3 things I carry in my pocket. The birth doulas have a birth doula bag, but kind of what is in that? Like, you're like, okay, these are the first kind of core things that my goal is, to help foster into you.
Yeah, it's funny because in one of my trainings, one of my learners asked that question. She's like, "Well, what did you do when you first came in?" I was like, "It's really funny because when I first started, I had this huge doula bag, right? And partly because of like you hear about in the birth world, like the birth doula, labor doula
Mhm.
world, that you do have a bag. And the more I got into it, the more I really found out and like learned about what the role of a doula really is, the less I had in my bag. And it went from tangible items to like the way that I care for my family. So it's like it's not even what I
Mhm.
bring in my bag, it's what I bring in me and the way that I support them. That's the most important. So I say all that to say, really try to be as hands off as possible. I think in the beginning, I read this in this group somewhere that this woman said, I've been a doula, a postpartum doula, or doula in general for like, I don't know, 12 plus years, like double digits. And she's like, I can count on my hands, both hands, how many babies I've held. And I was like, that's insane. Like, you're a doula. How do you not hold babies? But she's like, it's not my job. I'm not going to come in and take their babies out of their hand. We're here to support the diet. If they're always in our hands,
Mhm.
how are we helping them feel confident in being able to care for their
Yeah.
baby? That was just like my mind blew when I heard that. And I was like, it really resonated. And I give a lot of the credit to ProDoula because of the way that they teach doulas. And I have taken a lot of trainings in my
Mhm.
life. Like I have a thirst for knowledge. I am a training
Yeah.
and knowledge, like I'm obsessed, right? I'm a nerd. But I remember going that training and I can count on my hands, right? How many times we talked about the stuff like changing a diaper and all that, because that should not be the focus. Everyone can find
Mhm.
out how to change a diaper, right? Everyone can like figure that out. It's not rocket science. The point of us coming in is more to make sure that we're giving these people skills that last, the things that once they're out of diapers, it translates throughout all of their parenthood journey. And if we're coming in
Mhm.
and we're just showing them how to hold a bottle, okay, that's great. But like, what about when, they have to navigate a transition from school, from home to school and things of that nature? Like, we have to help the confidence to be able to navigate the ebbs and flows that is parenthood, because in large, a lot of the things they're going to have to deal with down the line, we're not going to be there for. So we want to make sure that what we're giving them is far beyond the things that are just, specific to this point in time.
That is so true. It does lead me to kind of another question that what happens when you have a client and you are working to build their confidence and enable them to like do the things, but they just kind of, you walk in and maybe it's just like, they're like, here's the baby, or, they're not really receiving that, what you're trying to like foster in them. Have you ever experienced that? And kind of, if you have, like, how did you tend to navigate that? Because we have clients, like such varying clients and their desires. And so sometimes we don't realize we're kind of, like walking into and we think we're coming in to help them. And they're kind of like maybe not as receptive to that, even though they want the help.
100%. There's different personality styles. And another thing that, and I'm going to say this a lot about ProDoula, that's because I really believe in the way that they equip doulas. And a part that they had in their training for me as a certifying doula was really important, was, and
Mhm.
like kind of opened my eyes. They had this thing called DISC, which is a personality assessment, and learned like there's different ways that you have to educate and doula someone. You can't come in and doula everyone the same way. Just like you can't parent the
Mhm.
same way, just like you can't care for children the same way. There's different ways that you have to kind of show up and
Mhm.
deliver the same kind of support that speaks to their personality style. So there's really no one blanket way to say that, but but that tool helped me be able to do that, right? Being able to assess like what's their personality style, what's the most dominant in that. We all have 4 different kind of styles or personality traits that we have. Which one's most prevalent
Mhm.
that I've learned? And then how do I speak to that one in a way that it translates, that they see me as someone that can lead them? Because essentially what we want to do is to establish that trust, right? That connection, that
Mhm.
trust. That when you come in and you say something, they're like, there's not that pushback. They're like, oh yes, I hired you. You're my expert, what
Mhm.
you're talking about, and you know how to support me, right? And that's why it's so important not to come in and overdo and overstep, because imagine if someone invited you in their home in their most intimate, vulnerable spaces, and we just take up the entire
Mhm.
room. I'm the main character. It's going to be really hard for them to be able to lean into you, because now they're like, oh, well, I don't want to say the wrong thing, right? Or I don't want, especially with like that extra
Mhm.
element of parenting, there's no gold star. You don't really get like a check mark at the end of the day. That's like, yeah, I did a good job. I did everything I'm supposed to do. So giving them space to be able to be human, essentially, and
Mhm.
just to normalize a lot of the things that comes with being a new parent really helps with that ability for them to want you to lead and to lean into you.
Yes, that is hugely important. And I think that's where walking in and being able to also, I say it a lot in the birth aspect of supporting clients, of mirroring their emotions, like when the birth plans change. But I think that that's a little bit of that too. Like I can tell you're very analytical, like I am. Like I love like assessments and all of the things. So that it's like, yes, what a great, add on to be able to like build you and recognize the differences in people like throughout your training, but is being able to be like, okay, like what are they experiencing right now, and how can I like mirror that to them in a way? And have you had like a memorable experience as such of with a client that you potentially were like able to really just be present and mirror that emotional space for them?
Yes, I had a client. This is her second birth. She had a very traumatic birth.
Mhm.
Lots of things went wrong, lots of complications. Baby was in the NICU for a little while, and they had an older child. So, like, there's a lot of shifting and pivoting that needed to happen. So, there's a lot of emotions, right? There's a lot that was going on, things that she hadn't really talked
Yeah.
about or even processed. So, I came into my morning shift. We were sitting down for breakfast. Her toddler had just finished, or I think she was like struggling to finish breakfast. And I don't know what I asked. I asked like a simple question or something like that. Or maybe I just said like how you're doing or something like that. And she just released. I mean, started very kind of like, oh, I'm okay. And then we talked through a couple of things. And then before I know it, she's crying like right in front of me. And I say this because I want to show 2 things that like as a society, like this is a mom that's been postpartum for like a week now. And this is probably the first space where she felt okay to not have it all together. She's been
Mhm.
like holding it together, being strong, quote unquote, and trying to just like be this brave front, this brave face, and finally had a moment to be able to become undone. And I think that should be our number one priority as is to be that safe space. And similar to what you were saying about like mirroring their emotions, like me coming in and be like, oh, aren't you excited to be home? Your baby's so beautiful and your toddler's so cute.
Mhm.
Like imagine if I came in with all that energy and she's struggling. That would have been really hard for her to be like, yeah, actually, I am struggling. If I'm like just talking about all this
Mhm.
great and flowery and like rainbows, but then also being able to sit with the uncomfortable and like negative feelings. It's hard. It's not like in our nature to want to sit in what's uncomfortable. And usually that's sadness, anger. Like, well, anger is kind of one of the easier ones, I think, but that's usually secondary to something else, usually like fear
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
anxiety. And so just being able to like really be in tune with your clients and knowing where they are, meeting them there and not trying to move them out of it, but move them through it.
Yes. Yeah, and we are a society that wants to fix. And so that's not our role. We're not there to like fix it. We're there with a toolbox to help them learn their skills to not fix it, but you know what I mean, like experience it and walk through it and know like they're supported in it. And you were are so right to anger. I heard or read this somewhere, but like anger is the easiest emotion to feel because it is secondary to the really hard ones. And so that's the thing that bubbles up. And when I think back of like the clients I've supported, the ones that were so vulnerable that like let me into that space. And oftentimes our shifts were really spent in sitting and talking and, me just listening to them and helping them process are the ones that I actually walked away with feeling like I did my role, like didn't necessarily touch dishes, didn't necessarily fold any laundry or any of that. But those were the ones where I was like, I feel like I actually made the difference. That is the passion of why I do the work that I do, because there's so much that's not talked in the postpartum period. And also like telling them the truth, like they're not alone in it, and being able to like resound that of, you are an individual experience this, but there's many, like this is normal, right? Like not
Yeah.
normal, but normal in that like you're not alone. And then
100%.
ideally like helping them with resources. And so I think that is one thing I saw on your amazing website was you had these community partnerships. And I would love to just kind of hear how those have come along and how you use those to enable clients maybe in those next steps when postpartum support isn't what is needed so much, but now they still need support maybe in other areas.
Yeah, and I want to touch on something that you said too, as well, is that a lot of the times we want to measure kind of our success as the doula, as like what we knocked off, like the to-do list. I remember my first training with ProDoula was like, we don't make to-doula. Like you're not coming in to have a to-do list and you just check off, I did laundry, the baby's sleeping through the night, this, and this. Like that's not the goal. That should never be the number one thing. You want to provide these spaces for them to be able to really come into their own. And so, yeah, that's super important. And them really going into what you just asked, having the resources to know that like, hey, this is outside of what I can support you in, or what we're like the role that we're in right now, or the season that you're in right now. So then let's figure out how we can get the support that you need. So like knowing when it's time to pass the baton and then having that community to do so. I urge those who take my training, like have a very robust referral list and not just like a Google search and you put them on a list, but like a relationship with them so that you can say like, hey, Lisa from so-and-so is great. And this is her philosophy. And this is the way you onboard. And this is her email. And not just like, here's the website, go do all the work. Because again, when you're that trusted ally, you're that trusted person, they giving that soft handoff, increases the likelihood they'll actually do the extra, it's going to go the extra step, but then also make sure that you're handing them off to someone that can actually help them in the way that they need to be helped. Not just like, oh, this person, is open, but like, will they support them in the way that they need to be supported? It's very important, just as much as the availability piece.
Yes, 100%. Oh my goodness. I cannot rephrase and say that again of network and connect with your community and not just like a little group, but know the people. And even because we serve such varying clients often is having a varying resource list. So then that way, like, okay, like my client, I have gotten to know her and I know this provider personality wise probably is going to be able to step in and continue such incredible support versus just giving them a name. I do love when clients hire me before baby's born so we can do a little bit of pre-work, not always the case, but oftentimes like if they did and having that postpartum visit, I would be like, okay, let's go through resources and have a list that's specific to you. And oftentimes kind of have already identified who would be a good counselor for them and kind of have that where I'm also like, go to the website, maybe do a consultation with them in advance. So then that way, if you need it, it's not this very scary foreign thing that you're stepping into, but you already know, okay, I have someone in my contacts that I can call if this starts getting harder than I can manage. And that, the continuing care that you don't have to do it alone. And so I think that is huge, but not everyone hires us before. And so there's, that's kind of a luxury side of it. But I think that is huge of being able to really, really connect clients and the smooth handoffs and all of those. And so with that is kind of also navigating how we support a wide range of clients and their preferences. And maybe, like if there's an experience that you've had where you've navigated differences differences in expectations with a client? And maybe too, like speaking of what that looks like when you step in with the support. We talked a little bit about that of like that first initial touch point, but we have clients who hire us before baby's born. And then we have clients who call us and they're like, I need support today or tomorrow. Like, can someone please come? What does that kind of look like for you too?
Yeah, we actually talk about this training and or talk about this in my training about like coming in and we do and that's like the emotional part, right? Knowing that typically like where their mental state is. When someone's I call them like a guard client, like emergency, like they're, hey, get in here, like too much for me to handle. That means there's usually a lot of different like complexities that we're gonna have to dig deep. And that's why we're not gonna come in with like surface level things. We're not gonna come in and be like, okay, I'm gonna hold your baby. It's like, hey, let's process what's going on because for you to come in the way that you did, there has to be some things going on. And this is also where you kind of have to like fine tune and like be able to, again, kind of read the room and know like when to push and when to pull back, you know, because it's similar to labor. Like, you know, when you need to take charge and when you need to just be like, no, they're working through it, you know, gentle hand versus a firm hand. And there's so many emotional pieces that come with almost any decision that you make as a parent. I mean, almost every decision that you make as a parent, especially a new parent. So kind of getting some context of just like, hey, what's been going on? Like, tell me about how the last X weeks or X days have gone. Like, you know, knowing where they are in the postpartum journey and knowing what could be happening, what's like the norm for happening. So like if for 2 weeks postpartum, what does that look like for them? Like, how are the hormones? How's the physical report, you know, physical part going? How is baby developing? Like what's going on with baby as well? And asking those questions specific. So instead of coming in and saying, how was your day? Or how was last night? Like, hey, I noticed that like baby, you probably had like day night confusion. They're probably like sleeping only like 30 minutes and they want to be held or they won't go in there fast enough. And like speaking to that, because it does two things. It shows that you know what you know, right? So establishing that credibility with them, but also it invites them into the space of like, oh wait, this is normal, you know, validating and affirming that that's normal. And then also being like, oh, I can talk to you about this without like it being a thing. Like you actually care that I'm struggling with the fact that I have to hold my baby for every nap or they won't lay down. I thought they were broken, you know, like all of these things.
Yeah. And what happens, I feel like clients oftentimes will, especially those who are kind of overwhelmed, you know, they're the ones that call us. They didn't realize what postpartum was going to be like. And so they're kind of like, okay, great. But like, what would you do in this situation? I feel like that is always kind of a question when we're like, here's the information, here's your options. And then they're kind of still like, but what would you do? What is maybe a way that you kind of help a client like gently but firmly pull them along in that space when they're still kind of like, okay, but how about you just do what you're gonna do? Like if you had kids, what would you do? Or things of that.
Yeah, I mean, in the bird space, we talk about the support, like the brain model, you know, and postpartum. I think those first three, like the BRA, benefits, risk, alternatives, same thing. Where you're like, hey, these are your options. Here's what happens if you do this option. Here's what you do with this option. Which one? And this is what happens when we do nothing. Which one sounds good to you? Like, you know. And then a lot of times when you phrase it like that, they're like, oh, okay, I don't like how this is, or they'll be like, well, you know, tell me more about this, or well, what do you think about this? I'm like, well, this is the benefits and the, you know, of that. And I just keep on giving like, well, this is
Yeah.
this and this is what happens with this. I just kind of throw it back in their court. I had that client that was like, tell me, like, she's like, I know. And it was so funny because she was like, I know you're not going to tell me, but like, what would you do? And I was like, well, what I did for my baby 8 years ago or even 4 years ago is widely different than what I would maybe do now. That's what worked then. But like, things have changed. Like the things that change even like day to day, year to year, I probably wouldn't make a lot of decisions that I made last time with what I know now, and it's going to continue to grow and flourish. So let's go through the risk, and you know, that I kind of lead it back. Let's go through some of the options that we have now that I didn't have back then, and see what sounds good to you.
Yeah. And I always also try to like express like, oh my goodness, you know, my children are irrelevant to this, like the space that I'm in, right? Like that's very different babies, you know, they're all little individual babies. And reminding them too when clients hire like a second time is this baby is different than the first one. And so you might not make the same choices. You might not be able to do the same stuff because the baby might not respond as well to it. And so, yeah, I always find it so interesting when sweet clients are kind of like, okay, but what, just like, they're so tired, you know, like they're just like, just kind of make the decision. I think about it in reference to like my husband and I'm like, can you just decide dinner about anything? Can you just decide it and do it, you know, like you're just desperate to not make it, but you're still trying to like, because like we know the other side of it of like, I promise when you make the decision and then, you know, like you get to the other side of it, you're going to like have that confidence. You're going to be proud of yourself versus if we were just like, oh yeah, I swaddled my baby or whatever that might be, right? If we just do that, then it's still taking away that like confidence building. And so I think that is huge. What is a way that you might measure the impact of your support for like the families that you assist, you know, through the postpartum support? And what has that looked like for you? Because you've been doing this for a while. And so I think sometimes that kind of is like what helps when we're getting to those places of being burned out, of those little things that kind of help encourage us along of like, okay, I'm making a difference essentially.
Yeah, it's the confidence. It's when they start to kind of lean in more and instead of like, hey, I want to run this by you. It's like, hey,
Mhm.
this is what I'm thinking. And I'm like, yes, look at you flexing your like, your parent muscle. I love it. And I kind of like make sure I do little breadcrumbs of that throughout like our time together of like when they make a call and whether it was right, quote unquote, or not, or if it worked out or not, I'm like, that was awesome that you lead into your gut. Like more times than not, when you lead with your gut, like it's ingrained in you, you're gonna be led away. And I like to say that like parenting and tailoring for children is like falling forward. You literally just have to like do something and fall, and either you get caught or you fall on your face, and then you're like, okay, well that didn't work, so let me go this way. Like we're
Yeah.
all just kind of literally just falling forward, right? It's all educated
Yeah.
guesses and just kind of pivoting when they tell us whether something works or not. You kind of touched on
Mhm.
it with talking about like each baby is different. I even say the same with twins because a lot of times because they share the same womb, came out at the same time. I tell my clients and I tell my trainers or my trainees that call twins by their names. I don't come and say, how did the twins sleep? Like, how did Lily do? How did
Mhm.
Joy do? Because they're separate. They are separate individuals, like, and asking specific questions to each one. Like, I know Joy was struggling with such and such, and I know that Lily was struggling with this. Tell me how that went with that, like with each one, instead of like, well, how the
Mhm.
twins do this, like, let's show that these babies are different and that like what worked, and like using that and those comparisons of like, oh, remember how like Lily really loved the pacifier, but Joy was like, no, thank you, I don't want that. Like,
Mhm.
how cool is it that even though they shared the same womb, they have this like great like individuality and like their individual, just
Yeah.
normalizing and like getting excited about that rather than like, oh, I'm not supposed to treat them the same way. And it's like, no, you don't have to because they're own people.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. When you said that about the twin, I remembered when we had a client with triplets and all three babies were like on different feeding regimens. You know, one had severe acid reflux, you know, so they had like special, one was on breast milk, one was, you know, like, and they are so different. And so that impacts their temperament as well. And so we had to do different things for each baby, like burp them differently, swaddle them differently, you know, like all of the stuff. And so that is so true. They are not one, they are each individual. And that is such a great reminder for doulas going into supporting multiples because I know that there's an essence when we're hired in that. Same with singleton, but is that like parents are really, really, really like we need them to be on like a set schedule. We need, you know what I mean, like feeding at the same time, like all of the things, but kind of remembering too, like they're adjusting differently on their own. But I have found sometimes when I left my postpartum clients, I didn't always have like the closure to like the care. I knew I had worked myself out of a job in essence, right? Is what we kind of say is our role as a doula. But there was kind of like this always like, okay, how's it going? Like I want to do a check-in. I want to know. And so sometimes that was hard to navigate of like we become somewhat embedded into the family, you know, because we're there and we're seeing them sometimes up to like every day for some clients, you know, like depending on what the care looks like for them. And so sometimes it's kind of like, oh, okay, like this is it. But it's also such an honor to do that, to work ourselves out of the role because we know that they have had this time and this growth and the skill set and the transition that is going there. And then how it is so cool. And I think these are the moments where I'm like, oh, I really like I did a good job is when they word of mouth and the reviews. I saw your incredible reviews on your website. And I think like, you know, that is just a reminder of don't be afraid to ask for reviews because those, you know, like in the word of mouth, like, hey, if you know someone else having a baby, that is the point because when they've been so well supported, they're going to do that. And then those are the little pieces of nuggets, you know, the little crumbs we we get to see along the way that our work is impactful and meaningful, and just we have such a unique element of stepping into the lives of these women and families and just holding their hands. And so I think that that is just incredible. I would kind of love if you wanted to share any other kind of recommendations for it's someone who's desiring to be a doula, a new doula, or someone that, has been a doula but maybe isn't aware of some of the just resources out there that you think would be such a skill set to add on for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think you should always be looking to just better yourself just in general. Like, I'm always trying to figure out how to better myself as just an individual. But even more so when we're working with families, is that we're always having a hunger for more knowledge and how to support them better and how to increase our knowledge and our skill set. So, like, again, I said I'm a training like junkie. I love learning things. I love
Mhm.
just like being all over the place. But I also just think that you should never feel like you know it all. And I feel like the moment you feel like you know it all, then I think you need to step away because there's always things changing. There's always new protocols. There's always ways to get better and to better serve the, like you said, diverse clientele that we have the pleasure of serving. And if you're not constantly trying to figure out ways to just, that's not to say that you need to go take like a million trainings. I'm just saying that like you need to keep a pulse on just what's happening in the field, what's happening in the world that impacts in like specifically different clients and different diversities. So it's like being
Mhm.
really culturally inclusive and sensitive to the different and unique experience of every client. It's really the biggest thing. It's just knowing that just like every baby is different, every client is different, every part of each family is different, the dynamics are different. So just finding different ways to be able to best support the very many different variations that we will see in our career
Mhm.
is just so important and it's like it's necessary.
Yes. Oh my goodness. All the way. Yes. I think that is a huge element of how we continue. You talked about too, you mentioned a little bit earlier of like how even when like we had our kids and maybe the choices we made or the research that was there, everything is just constantly evolving and changing. And so having that, being aware of the information that is out there and being able to be a funnel and a source for clients as they go. And the only way we can do that is, I believe continuing education and reading and research in the different areas that they can just kind of connect. And so I think that is awesome. And as we kind of wrap up, I want to just encourage, I will be sharing your website and your information. So if you are looking for a training, would love for you to check out Danyale's site. And then of course, we are open to any questions. So if after you listen, you'd like to connect with us more, feel free to send us an email and we will connect with you. But I want to thank you, Danyale, for your time, your knowledge, your wealth, and just how much you have clearly loved and cared for the families that you've supported. It shows through in everything that you've shared today. So thank you again for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's been truly a treat.
You are amazing. Thank you.